Here are two charts of the American paycheck over the last half-century. This one is flat. Workers earn about what they earned in the 1970s. This one climbs up roughly a fifth. Same country, same workers. Both drawn from government data. And neither one is lying to you. Start with the flat line because it's the one you already know. In 2018, Pew Research took the average hourly wage, adjusted it for inflation, and found it had, their words, barely budged for decades. The peak was all the way back in January 1973, $4.03 an hour. In 2018 dollars, that was about $24 an hour, right around what the average wage still bought that year. Half a century of work, the hourly wage standing almost exactly where it started. Economists have a sharper version. The Economic Policy Institute lines up two curves since 1979. How much workers produce each hour and how much the typical worker takes home. By their measure, productivity climbs about 90%. Pay for the typical worker climbs about 33%. Hold on to that gap. It's the engine of the entire wages are stuck story. Just remember, it's the Institute's reading of the data, and as we'll see, not everyone accepts it. Now watch how fragile that story is, because it depends on where you start the clock. That 1973 peak is partly a mirage. In 1971, President Nixon froze wages and prices across the whole economy. Prices were held down by law, so inflation-adjusted wages floated up to an artificial high. When the controls came off, prices caught up, and that peak collapsed. Real wages fell almost 9% in 2 years. So when a politician says wages are lower than 50 years ago, fact-checkers at PolitiFact and Al Jazeera flag the sleight of hand. They're measuring down from a peak the government essentially manufactured. Move the starting line to September 1974, after the controls, when the number means something, and the same 50-year span turns into a gain. A small one, about 2.8% above inflation. Economists who agree on almost nothing, the progressive Dean Baker, the conservative Douglas Holtz-Eakin, agree that 1973 is a rigged place to begin. But the start date is only the warm-up. The real trick is the ruler itself. To turn any wage into a real wage, you divide it by a measure of inflation, a deflator, and there is no single official one. There are several, and they disagree with each other. So let's take one line and hold everything else still. The median weekly wage, the worker right in the middle. At the end of 1999, that was $482 a week. At the end of 2025, it's $1,040. Now the only question that matters, after inflation, did that worker actually gain ground? In May 2026, Pew ran that exact wage through 4 official inflation measures. The Standard Consumer Price Index, up about 12%. Its retroactive series, 11.5%. The chained CPI, which assumes people trade down when prices rise, up 20.1%. The PCE index, the one the Federal Reserve prefers, up 22%. Same paycheck, same 26 years, and the answer nearly doubles, from 11% to 22%, purely on which ruler you pick up. Nobody touched the wage. They swapped the yardstick. Why such a spread? A ruler that measures less inflation makes the same wage look richer. The chained index assumes that when one thing gets pricey, shoppers swap towards something cheaper, so it records a little less inflation every year, and a little less each year, compounded across 26 of them, is the difference between a raise you can barely feel and one worth bragging about. So how do you get a flat line and a rising line out of one economy? You stack the choices. Want wages are stuck? Use the average hourly wage. Start at that 1973 peak, deflate with the standard CPI. Want wages are up? Use the median weekly wage. Start in the 80s, deflate with the chained index, and it's up 19% since 1985, while the median household's real income, near $81,000, has grown more than a third since the mid-80s. Every one of those choices is defensible on its own. And every wage headline you've ever read quietly made all three of them for you. Which workers, which starting year, which ruler, before it decided whether your raise was real. There's even an honest fight about the productivity gap itself. The Heritage Foundation argues most of it dissolves if you measure pay and output with the same deflator. The Institute answers that its choice is reasonable too. They aren't lying to each other. They're holding up different rulers, and the ruler is the whole argument, and you can catch this yourself. The ruler is usually hiding in the fine print of the chart, the letters CPI or PCE or the word chained. And the year they started counting is sitting right there on the axis. Change either one, and the story is allowed to change with it. So next time a chart tells you wages soared or wages died, ask three quiet questions. Which workers? Which year they started counting? And which inflation ruler they reached for? Because the honest answer to, is your raise real, isn't yes, and it isn't no. It's compared to what? Your raise is real. So is your doubt. They're just measured differently,